Anabolic steroids do have an impact on the user's mental state. We talked about this last time. I talked about roid rage and the guy at the University of Nebraska, UNL, University of Nebraska Lincoln. There's also a UNO, University of Nebraska Omaha, and a UNK, University of Nebraska at Kearney. Not that anybody cares, unless you care about Nebraska. But I went to UNO and my daughter went to UNL, so I have lots of hours in political science, strangely enough. I was trying to get a master's degree in political science. Didn't finish. The reason I didn't finish is because I didn't write a thesis. So don't ever do that. I have enough hours for a third master's degree and I never finished it. You can punch me in the face if you want. I've been punching myself in the face ever since I didn't finish that damn degree. I can't go back and finish it because they dropped the political science program from UNO. I know, it's stupid. Don't ever do that. It's like I have this empty spot in my brain where I didn't finish my degree.
You can't transfer?
I could, but I'd probably have to take half the classes over again. Some of the classes I took, communism, you know, communism barely exists anymore. Oh, there you go. Is there any water in there? Yeah, are you thirsty? Oh, you guys. While some people report a slight euphoria when taking anabolic steroids, it is thought by researchers that this is due to the anticipation of intense activity rather than actual addiction. If you've ever been around anybody that uses steroids, they're very intense, especially when it comes to lifting or doing whatever it is that they do. Usually it has to do with bodybuilding. Some users do report withdrawal symptoms, and in fact, some users will use low doses during cycling to maintain their sanity because they have such extreme mood swings that they have to, take the hair of the dog in order to keep from going wacko. There is some animal study evidence that steroid use is addictive. There's a reason why these individuals are doing this. Usually it has to do with them thinking that it makes them look better. Whether it does or doesn't, I mean, that's up to you. If you think The Rock is better looking than who else is out there? Who's a pretty guy out there? Who's a pretty boy? Who's a pretty boy? Is there Ryan Reynolds? I don't know. Who's attractive? Who's a popular attractive male out in the movies? I don't know either. I never watched movies. I guess it's The Rock. He's number one. But The Rock is huge. And you can tell when he's been lifting and taking steroids because he gets massive. But he's a very large man, and the reality is that not everybody can do this kind of stuff. I mean, I couldn't decide to become a bodybuilder and all of a sudden look like The Rock. It's not going to happen that way. I would tear too many muscles, I'd break too many bones, and I'm way, way too old now anyway. So you have to be a certain body build in order to be able to put that much muscle mass on your body. Stimulants are taken by athletes to make them more alert, to make them feel more confident, and to make them stronger. Much of the increase in ability when taking amphetamines is increased focus and aggressiveness, so that's one of the reasons why people take amphetamines. We've had some problems with amphetamines. Back in the 80s and 90s, a lot of baseball players were taking using amphetamines, and there were a lot more brawls out there taking place. A lot more people, there were a lot more beanballs. So pitchers were throwing at batters, and batters, of course, were responding by charging them out and trying to kill the pitcher. And somebody had to go out and stop them before somebody got killed. Mainly because the batter's got a bat. It's a club. And he can just beat that guy to death. So you got to be careful. Heavy usage can lead to blood pressure problems, exhaustion, and malnutrition. And of course, this is the biggest problem with Baseball players have to maintain themselves. They play baseball every day. If they use amphetamines every day, they're not hungry. So potentially they're only going to last for a couple of weeks before they're going to start having problems losing weight and whatnot. Caffeine is a mild stimulant used by some athletes. At low doses, it increases your wakefulness, your mental alertness, slightly increases your endurance. Muscle contraction is a little bit better. Digestive disturbances, it causes digestive disturbances, which isn't very good. Urine output causes dehydration, and that's not good either. So there are some positives and there are obviously some negatives. A lot of baseball players would drink a cup of coffee or espresso before they go out and play. That's okay as long as, well, especially pitchers, because they don't usually last more than 6 or 7 innings. But the position players, of course, they have to play 9 innings. So these problems might interfere with their playing, the digestive disturbances and the dehydration. Ephedra, another name for ephedra is mahuang. You may have heard of this stuff. These were all popular drugs back at the turn of the 21st century, in the 1990s. So I've heard of all these things. I haven't used them. Well, actually, they used to put mahuang in some energy drinks. This is before they started, before 5-hour energy or whatever the hell that stuff was. Anyway, they used to put this mahuang in stuff. And I think I've tried it a couple times. I never had any reaction to it at all. But ephedra, of course, you see this in the plants. There are plants all around here that have ephedra in them. Ephedrine, these are mild stimulants that some athletes will use. These substances were found in many over-the-counter medicines. As I was telling you before, you can still find it at GNC. If you're looking for a mild stimulant, you can try it. Not everyone is sensitive to these medications, and that's probably what happened with me. If there was mahuang in something, I didn't even notice. I'm always about the same. The problem with the individuals that are sensitive to it, it causes jitteriness, it causes anxiety, headaches, high blood pressure, cardiac arrhythmia, poor digestion, and potential overheating. So you have to be careful when you take it, especially if you're hypersensitive to it. Chewing tobacco used to be a mainstay in Major League Baseball parks. When I was growing up in the 60s, 50s and 60s, everybody chewed tobacco. Almost everybody chewed tobacco anyway. A lot of the players chewed a lot of tobacco so that their jaws were really stuck out. From the beginning of baseball until the 1980s, many of, if not most, baseball players maintained a chaw of tobacco in their cheeks almost constantly during a game. So there was a lot of spitting taking place. Now there's a lot of spitting taking place if you ever watch a baseball game, but what they're usually spitting are sunflower seeds. Hulls, not the seeds. They're not spitting out the seeds, they're spitting out the hulls. So you watch these guys, and they're just constantly spitting out the hulls of the sunflower seeds. Many baseball icons of the past died of throat or esophageal cancer. Of course, this is relatively rare today because they have outlawed it, but they have grandfathered select individuals in. This is Nellie Fox, died of esophageal cancer. He was famous for having the biggest chaw in baseball, and as you can see on his baseball card, he didn't spit it out for his picture. This is Pablo Sandoval. He was grandfathered in. He plays for the Giants now. He played for the Red Sox, or the Red Sox for about 3 seasons. But he has been grandfathered. He's been allowed to chew tobacco. They would do some really weird things. They would take a small ball of tobacco and then they would wrap chewing gum around it, bubble gum. As stupid as that sounds, just to give them a larger chaw. It's kind of stupid, but they're baseball players. What do you expect? Okay. Human growth hormone is a hormone produced by the pituitary gland to stimulate growth in children. It is prescribed for children who are of unusually small stature to stimulate growth and for people with wasting diseases like AIDS to build their strength. And that's human growth hormone, HGH. It's used by athletes because it increases your muscle mass, it increases your skin. The thickness of your skin, as bizarre as that sounds. It promotes connective tissue in the muscles. Last time I was talking about not bodybuilders, but what am I thinking? Powerlifters. Powerlifters have a lot of connective tissue. If you see a bodybuilder, he's really ripped. They tend to be really ripped. Their muscles are very obvious, and each muscle is built up. But if you look at a power lifter, they're as large as a bodybuilder, but their muscles don't look, they're not ripped. Their muscles don't look as good. And the reason they don't is because in order for them to lift large weights, they need a lot of connective tissue between their muscles. And because of that, they look fat. So they look like they have a fat gut, and they actually do have a fat gut. But all of their muscles, their pecs, their deltoids, their trapezius muscles, they've got a lump of fat around, well, it looks like fat, but what it actually is connective tissue. So that's what HGH does. So HGH is actually really popular with power lifters. I told you I had a friend that was a pole vaulter in high school, and he was in very, very good shape, went to Vietnam, decided that if he looked bigger, or if he could bench press a tank or whatever. He thought that if he looked big enough that people wouldn't mess with him. And he was small. He was actually shorter than I am, about 5'4". So he was afraid that if he tangled with an NVA or a Viet Cong or whatever, that he might lose, despite the fact he was so strong. So he decided to become a power lifter, and he just got big. He just got bigger and bigger because of all this connective tissue. And of course, who wants to mess with it? Well, who wants to mess with anybody anyway? So he power lifted the rest of his life, took a lot of steroids, took a lot of HGH, and now he's non-functional. And he's younger than I am. He's 2 years young. He's my brother's age. So he graduated in '69, so he's 2 years younger than I am, and he's non-functional now. All of his joints, none of his joints work. He can barely move. Even his knees, because that's when Anyway, so he's fairly non-functional. Acromegaly, and I'm going to show you a picture of what acromegaly looks like in a second. Acromegaly has to do with elongation of your face. Cardiovascular disease is a real serious problem. These people rarely live into their 60s, which is an oddity because this guy's 68 years old and he's still alive, but like I said, he's non-functional. But normally they die of heart attacks, they die of kidney problems, they blow out their livers with the steroids. He's lucky, I guess. He's lived longer than he should have. Decreased sexual desire. This guy's never been married. He went to Vietnam right out of high school, and he started powerlifting, and he has never wanted to get married or whatever. Goiter causes thyroid problems, menstrual disorders and impotence, and potentially has been his problem for the last 45 years. Decreases in lifespan up to 20 years, and that's mainly because you're accelerating your age with human growth hormone. That's what acromegaly looks like. Some basketball players, they look like this. They have acromegaly. If you take too much HGH, too many steroids, this is what will happen to you. You can see how small his ear is. His face is much larger than it should be, and it has elongated because of what he has done to himself. It also affects your joints, especially your hand and elbow joints. So a lot of times their coordination isn't as good. So if you see somebody like this, a 7'5" person from the Ukraine, a lot of times they'll have acromegaly, and they're not very coordinated. So they're not very good basketball players. They can barely jump because they have bad knees. But this is what happens to you when you take too many drugs. Androstenedione or andro and dehydroepiandrosterone, DHEA, are natural hormone precursors to testosterone. These are the pre-steroids. These are in your body. Well, they're especially in male bodies, of course, because we have more testosterone. But DHEA and andro are in there somewhere. They are to allow you to mature. It's for puberty. After puberty, they almost completely go away. However, if you use supplements of andro or DHEA, it will increase your, theoretically, it increases your steroid level. So it is a precursor. If you don't need it, you don't use it. I mean, it's a pre-steroid. So it just passes through your system. DHEA does something else. DHEA also reduces stress. It also reduces your fat content in your body, as strange as that may seem. So they did a study about 35 years ago. The nurses did a study about 35 years ago, and what they determined was that the people that take DHEA have smaller abdomens, have accumulated less fat. Their spare tire isn't as extensive if they take DHEA. That's what they determined. No one has seen any negative side effects from DHEA or from andro. As I said before, they are pre-steroids. So if you need them, you use them. If you don't need them, it just passes right out of your system. Neither of these supplements have been found to do more than increase testosterone levels in men with abnormally low testosterone levels. If you don't need this, it doesn't happen. It just doesn't happen. It's not like steroids. Steroids are always in your system. This stuff is a pre-steroid. So if you need it, you use it, you make it into steroids. If you don't need it, you don't. It just goes away. They also seem to increase your HDLs and the female hormone estradiol. So potentially, it'll make you more feminine, because it increases your estradiol level. But it also increases your HDLs, which are the good, that's the good cholesterol. So the question is, should people take DHEA? And the answer is, if they're in a highly stressful situation, then it reduces your stress. They're thinking, the United States military is thinking of giving it to soldiers in combat. They can't give it to female soldiers in combat, but they can give it to male soldiers in combat. They'll have less of a reaction to the stress of combat. So they're thinking maybe they should do that. Who knows what they're going to do? They've tried other things that didn't work at all. They're trying to keep people from getting PTSD. But they haven't been successful up to this point. Beta blockers are medications prescribed to lower your blood pressure. It decreases your heart rate. It prevents arrhythmias. It reduces your eye pressure. So beta blockers are for people with high blood pressure. They work by blocking adrenaline from exciting the heart. They also calm the individual by blocking nerve cells in the brain. So beta blockers are good, but not everybody can use them. Beta blockers are used by athletes who require precision and concentration, like archers, participants in rifle shooting competitions, ski jumpers, and divers, because precision is very important to these individuals, these select individuals. So they try to slow down their heart rate, they try to lower their blood pressure so that they can concentrate and hit the bullseye every time, whatever. There is a problem with beta blockers. It does lower your blood pressure, and it can lower your blood pressure to the extent that you'll pass out, and that's the biggest problem. I know. Beta blockers do have their problems: fatigue, lethargy, dangerously low blood pressure, gastritis, occasional nausea. Sometimes you vomit. Temporary impotence because it lowers your blood pressure, and of course, especially if you're a male, blood pressure has to do with erection. May intensify your asthma if you have asthma. It intensifies heart problems that may kill the user, and this is usually where the problem comes right here. If they take beta blockers for one reason, sometimes they just die. And the reason they die is because they already have heart problems. That what they need is to stimulate their heart, keep their heart beating, especially if they have an arrhythmia. And if they take the beta blockers, then the heart's not really beating very fast, and all of a sudden they have an arrhythmia, and all of a sudden it stops. This is an individual that you need to do heart compressions on to keep them alive, as weird as that is. Okay. Erythropoietin, this is what we give to individuals suffering from anemia. This is what we give to people suffering from leukemia. We give it to people who have HIV. What erythropoietin does, or EPO, what it does, it increases the number of red cells in circulation. And this is good, especially with somebody that has a problem. My sister she had endometrial cancer, and they were treating her with chemo and radiation, and they were just blasting her red cells to the extent that you could see just by looking at her face whether she was suffering or not. Sometimes she just wanted to sleep all the time. And if you looked at her face, you looked at her gums, you looked at her fingernail, the beds of her fingernails, you could see that her red count was way, way down. Well, you can't give it's not like you can give people this stuff all the time. She would have to go in and either get a blood transfusion, or they would give her erythropoietin, and of course it would kick her own bone marrow into producing more red cells. That's what it's for. That's what it's for in medicine. But of course you can use this stuff to cheat. So people that need a lot of stamina will take erythropoietin, and they will increase the number of red cells in their bodies, and so they will have more oxygen carrying capacity. So that's how they cheat, unfortunately. There is a problem with EPO, and the problem for athletes is that it thickens your blood. Now, most people don't want their blood thickened because there's a greater possibility of blood clot. But of course, if you're a cyclist or you're a cross-country runner, then this is one of the things that you want. You want more stamina. And of course, sometimes these people die of heart attacks. They die of strokes, which is unfortunate, but I mean, they're the idiots that took the EPO to begin with. I know I should be more sensitive. A similar problem is blood doping, where the athlete stores their own blood prior to competition, and then they are administered the packed RBCs to increase the stamina of the individual. If I drew a unit of blood from somebody in here, that blood would be good for about 30 days. So you have to draw this blood off within the 30 days, otherwise the RBCs are too low. And all you're doing is pumping useless blood into somebody's body. But they do this. They'll draw off units of blood from this individual. They'll give them the EPO to increase their RBCs, and then they'll give them the blood during competition. Now, of course, this doesn't always work. Oh no! Oh, you got a place to sit. Okay. So these are the individuals that do this kind of crap. The cross-country runners, cyclists, of course, because especially the people in the Tour de France. One of the problems in the Tour de France is that almost everybody cheats in one way or another, and they keep trying to catch them. For the longest time, they didn't catch Lance Armstrong. And of course, he won the Tour de France 7 times, 5 times in a row. You know. And then they took all of his wins away from him because he cheated. He was doing all this kind of stuff. And there are ways to mask all this. He of course had testicular cancer. Had one of his testicles removed, it metastasized. He started having brain cancer. He had brain tumors, small brain tumors. They thought he was going to die. They started treating him with all kinds of cancer medications, And one of the things that he discovered was that he had a lot more stamina with some of the medications that they were giving him to keep him alive. So once he started cycling again, he just used that stuff. And of course it was all cheating, something that he wasn't supposed to do. So he lost all of his Tour de France wins. He had the yellow band that everybody was wearing. Live Strong, was it Live Strong? I think so, yeah. That whole idea. And of course, if he had stayed a hero, now he's kind of a goat, but if he had stayed a hero, we'd all be wearing the yellow bands on our wrists, and he'd probably be the next president of the United States or something. Anyway. But he cheated. So he's not part of Live Strong anymore. And actually Live Strong isn't very powerful anymore. They used to sell them at the cashier at Walmart and at Target and Kohl's and all those other places. They used to sell those Live Strong bands. And of course they cost you, I don't know, $3 or something, and $2 went to the organization. He was dating Sheryl Crow. Lance Armstrong was engaged to Sheryl Crow. And then after they caught him cheating, well, it was a little bit before they caught him cheating, they broke up. This just breaks my heart. Okay. I'm a romantic. I like this stuff when, guys and girls get together or whatever. I don't care who gets together as long as somebody gets together. Athletes will use just about any substance that will give them a competitive edge. Herbs, they'll take all kinds of strange herbs and say this really works, that kind of stuff. Animal extracts, as weird as that sounds. They'll take mega vitamins. They'll take excessive amounts of minerals, especially selenium. And of course they'll take in masses of protein in order to build their muscle mass. Unfortunately, some of these items may contain banned chemicals and cause the athlete a great deal of trouble. And of course, that's the way it works. One dietary supplement used by athletes is creatine. I don't know if you've ever used this stuff or have ever heard of this stuff. It was real popular in the 80s. Then they banned it for a while, and then it came back in the 90s. And then people used it, and then it was banned for a while, and then it came back at the turn of the 21st century. Hasn't been banned here lately. There is a problem with creatine. Creatine is an amino acid that occurs naturally in the human body as well as fish and meat. So you can get all the creatine you want if you take fish oil supplements. You get lots and lots of creatine. But it's not the same stuff. The stuff you get from GNC, it's in a powder, and you drink a milkshake with this crap in it every day. This gives you a lot more creatine than those little pills, those little fish pills, fish oil pills. Ugh. And they give you fish oil breath, which is always exciting. Creatine is used because it delays muscle fatigue. It stores energy that can be used in short bursts. It extends the amount of time a person can work out. It helps muscles recover faster. So it sounds like a steroid. It isn't. It's not a steroid. It is an amino acid. Problems come when it is overused. It can cause dehydration. It can cause all kinds of really interesting stomach cramps. So these people, well, I'm not going to tell you what happens. They fart, okay? And it stinks. It really, really smells bad. They get nausea and they have diarrhea. Muscle pulls and strains because their muscles become stronger than their body can maintain. If your muscles are stronger than they're supposed to be, then the muscle will tear away from the bone. This is not a good thing because the only way to repair it is to sew it back on. And then it takes 6 months for it to tie in. It also blows out your kidneys, and this isn't good either. You lose your kidneys, and that's not good. Gamma hydroxybutyrate, or GHB, was used in the 1980s and early 1990s. If you went to the gym in the 1980s and 1990s, people were trying to sell you this stuff. It works. It really does work. The problem is, well, there are problems with it. It allows you to burn fat. It's an anabolic agent, so it builds muscle mass. It knocks you out, which is kind of interesting. And people liked it because you could go to sleep and you built muscle while you were sleeping. It was just the most bizarre thing in the world. It tends to dehydrate you, so it defines your muscles. So if you've got a muscle mass in your deltoids or your pecs, it actually striates your muscles because it pulls the water out. It's a plant growth supplement, so you can find it at nurseries and whatnot. It's also a psychedelic, strangely enough. It's a psychedelic. So people really like this stuff. They take it before they went to bed. They actually gain muscle mass while they were asleep. When they woke up, their muscles were more defined than they were before because it draws a lot of moisture, water out of your body. So you had more defined muscles, and you had great dreams while you took this stuff, GHB. Unfortunately, if you give somebody a larger dose, it'll knock them right out. And of course, sexual predators started using it as a date rape drug, dropping it in young ladies' drinks, and they'd get a little bit woozy, and of course that's when they walked them out of the place, and then they would pass out, and of course they would do what they were planning on doing anyway. So they use it as a date rape drug. It's against the law in the United States. The only legal usage for this stuff is for people who have weak muscles, for muscle weakness. So they would give it to somebody who had HIV or had a muscle wasting disease like HIV. But it's against the law. You can't have this stuff. If you do have this stuff, you better have a reason for it because it's used as a date rape drug. And if you have it and you're caught with it, then they will assume that you're going to use it as a date rape drug, unless you have a muscle wasting disease. Some athletes will consume sodium bicarbonate 30 minutes prior to exercising to decrease the development of acidosis. When I was walking up the stairs today, I had to slow down going up after the 5th floor because I was building up lactic acid in my legs. I could feel it. That's the acidosis we're talking about, this lactic acid buildup. Whenever you can't move that muscle anymore and it hurts, it's probably a lactic acid buildup. So they would use sodium bicarbonate to reduce the amount of acidosis that was taking place. This works for shorter events that take place within 10 minutes, but not for longer endurance events. Maybe I should take some sodium bicarbonate when I get to work so that I can walk the stairs without getting just a thought. It can cause diarrhea and water retention, which nobody likes. Either one. Wait a minute. Diarrhea, you squirt out all that water, and water retention, they sound counterintuitive, don't they? Athletes trying to make weight will resort to various techniques to drop unwanted pounds. Is anybody a wrestler? Does anybody wrestle? I got the one wrestler right there, okay. Did you have to make weight? We won't go into the rest of it. Okay, so these guys, in order to make weight, they'll take all kinds of they'll do all kinds of interesting things. They'll take diuretics, which suck the water out of their system. They'll take laxatives to empty their colons out because you can maintain a lot of feces, masses of feces, which weigh something. It's like clay. They exercise excessively. They'll fast and not eat anything and not drink anything and spit in cups. Nasty stuff. Self-induced vomiting, where they'll stick their fingers down their throat and throw up. They'll go into the sauna with plastic outfits on and just sweat like pigs. Well, pigs don't really sweat, but they sweat like humans. Or they'll take stimulants, and that's to lose all this weight. Actually, all they're doing is losing water weight. But water weighs a lot. Tomorrow I will run in the morning, and I'll lose about 3 pounds. So I'll lose that much water. It's all water weight, and I know that. I don't really weigh 180 pounds. I weigh 185. I know I do. But tomorrow, after I run, I'll weigh myself and I'll go, all right. It's all a lie, and I know it's in my head. But I'll lose about 3 pounds when I run tomorrow. Probably. Usually I lose about 3 pounds. Some athletes will lose 3 to 5% of their body weight in a couple of days. And you can actually do this. It's stupid. The reality is, after they go through all this crap, they have to wrestle, and of course they're weaker than they would have been otherwise. They don't like people doing this anymore. They try to block it. They don't want people to try to make weight. They want people to wrestle at their natural weight, not to lose weight so that they can wrestle down. You know, so they get to wrestle the little skinny guy. This great big hulking monster gets to wrestle this little skinny guy because he lost all this water before he wrestled him, and then he just beats the crap out of him. But he wins, and of course winning is the only thing that's important. Anorexia and bulimia are not uncommon among athletes who are potentially trying to make unrealistic weight levels. This is wrestlers with males. Most males are trying to bulk up. Baseball players, basketball players, football players, they're all trying to be as big as they possibly can be. So that's not a problem, it's the wrestlers that is the problem. And we have had wrestlers die from trying to lose weight, as sad as that is. But there's a lot of women's sports where the coaches want them to lose weight. Gymnastics, of course. When I was working at Ashford University, we had a really good women's tennis team. And we had a coach that he must have weighed 300 pounds. I mean, he was just, and he had no muscle mass at all. But he would take the girls into he'd take all of his tennis players into the weight room, and they would lift weights until they sweated like pigs. They sweated like humans, actually. Because he wouldn't allow his female athletes to compete unless they were at a certain weight. And he's the one that set their weight. Well, of course, they got into trouble. They had a German tennis player who was really good, but he kept setting these unrealistic weight levels for her. But she was really good, but he wouldn't let her play unless she lost enough weight. Well, she's German. I don't know if you understand. The Germans are big people. They maintain a lot of mass. They're not like, I don't know, they're not like everybody else, I guess. Well, they are like everybody else, but they're just big people. They've got big shoulders. It was funny watching her lift weights because she would lift a bar, a 45-pound bar. She'd just lift it like 50 or 60 times. It was kind of silly. And I kept making fun of her because, well, she's only lifting a bar with no weight on it. Anyway. Another problem with weight maintenance is the opposite of anorexia, muscle dysmorphia, where the individual becomes obsessed with muscle development as they see themselves as too weak whenever they look in the mirror. And of course, we see this with bodybuilders. They're trying to put on they're trying to build specific muscles. They want big pecs, or they want big deltoid muscles. They want to be ripped, that whole thing. So they do all kinds of interesting things because of this body dysmorphia. Or they want big biceps, or they want, well, nobody wants big triceps, but they want big biceps. These individuals are more likely to take copious supplements and steroids to combat their body's weaknesses. They're trying to be as big as they possibly can be. Be whatever you can be, I guess. Athletes will often use diuretics to lose weight rapidly, to limit the bloating caused by steroids, by sucking the water out of their system to avoid detection of illegal drugs, lose weight to look thinner. And of course, this is one of the things that they will do. They'll take diuretics so that they don't, and it will suck all the bad urine out of their body, all the bad water out of their body, and then they will fill up on water, but it's clean water, it's safe water. So it will dilute out all of the supplements that they've been taking. Having worked as the individual that collected drug urines when I was in the military, I've seen all the tricks. They used to take a supplement that turned their urine blue, And theoretically, whatever was in there, whatever this blue stuff was, it was supposed to be diluting out all the bad stuff in their urine. Didn't work. It was a good idea though, and it was kind of fun. I mean, almost all urine is either clear or some shade of yellow, and this stuff was blue, so it was kind of fun. If you like colors, and you had to dip it. You had to make sure that it wasn't diluted out, and so you had to dip it. And it's always fun to use the blue strip because the urine's blue. Athletes need to monitor their use of diuretics because of the possibility of dehydration, leading to heat stroke and organ damage. Dehydration will cause organ damage if you do this over and over and over and over and over again. If you go out and you're working out in the sun this summer and you're sweating like crazy, you're going to be dehydrated. That's okay because you're going to drink water and it's going to rehydrate you and everything's going to be fine. These guys stay dehydrated over a long period of time because they want muscle definition. So they'll try to suck all the water out of their system to make them look more ripped. So they stay dehydrated for an extended length of time, and this is where the damage comes in. If you guys dehydrate over the summer, don't worry about it. You're going to go and drink a gallon of water later on, and of course you're going to rehydrate, and there's no problem. Your organs haven't been without water for an extended length of time, so you're okay. And this, of course, this is one of the things that kills you if you're out in the desert and you can't get any water. You'll die within a couple of days. And one reason is because your organs are shutting down because they don't have enough water, and that's what these guys are doing to themselves voluntarily. Weightlifters will take adrenaline supplements combined with amyl and isobutyl nitrite to increase their strength. It unfortunately can cause dizziness, rapid heartbeat, and hypertension. This is not good, especially if they're trying to bench press or they're doing military presses. A lot of times they'll pass out while they're lifting weights. And of course, they've just really screwed themselves up. Bee pollen is sometimes taken as a supplement. It's a way of boosting energy levels, digestion, and reduce stress. You go to GNC, you can find bee pollen. It's right there right under the bees, right behind B1, B2, B6, B12. Is bee pollen is the next supplement. The question is, does it work? And studies don't support any benefits whatsoever. It's organic, so people use it. And it's supposed to give them energy, but does it really give them energy? Well, it's honey, okay? So yeah, it gives you all that stuff. Some athletes will take calcium pangabate as a supplement. This chemical combination is sometimes referred to as vitamin B15 and panjamic acid. It is refuted to keep muscle tissue better oxygenated, though there is no scientific research to back up the claim. Yeah, bodybuilders, they pass these things back and forth, like these stories, these myths. So people will start taking all these really strange supplements. If they really take hold, all of a sudden this $5 bottle of panjamic acid that you can buy from GNC, all of a sudden it's $35 on the internet, and the stuff that they sell at GNC is not the real stuff. So you have to get it from one of these strange places that makes this stuff. Unfortunately, panjamic acid is a known carcinogen, so taking it can potentially cause cancer. Periactin is reputed to be a steroid-like bodybuilder and has been used to increase body weight and muscle strength. This drug is actually an antihistamine. It acts as a serotonin and histamine antagonist, and it increases muscle mass and strength by making the individual hungry. So it makes you eat more. And theoretically, you eat more protein. If you eat more protein, you build more muscle. That's the idea anyway. It actually merely increases the user's appetite and has the added side effect of decreased performance, sweating, and sedation. And the sweat that you sweat is not a very pleasant odor. If you've ever been in a gym and somebody was stinking up the place, it may have been this stuff. could have been, there's a lot of things it could have been. There's a lot of people that when they take these supplements, it really makes their sweat smell bad. It's not like body odor, it's a different odor. It has a sulfury ammonia smell to it. Darbepoetin is a medication developed to treat chronic anemia. Just like erythropoietin, the drug increases RBCs and thus the oxygen carrying capacity of the athlete's blood. So of course it increases the number of RBCs, but it can also thicken your blood, and if it thickens your blood, you may potentially have a stroke, a blood clot and a stroke. Stroke's not the worst, well, it is the worst thing that can happen to you, but it's not the only thing that can happen to you. You can also get a blood clot in your leg, you can get a blood clot in your lung, and the one in your lung can kill you, the one in your leg probably won't, but it hurts like the devil. Human chorionic gonadotropin is what babies produce, fetuses produce while they're in the womb. They produce the human chorionic gonadotropin to protect themselves from their mother's immune system. Human chorionic gonadotropin is the substance that is produced by a tumor to protect itself when it metastasizes. And the only reason it can travel throughout the body is because it has covered itself with human chorionic gonadotropin. And that allows it to move from one place to the other without the immune system destroying it. Once a cancer has metastasized, once it starts producing human chorionic gonadotropin, it's really tough to knock out. Mainly because your immune system can't do it. Your immune system thinks it's part of your body. It doesn't see it as an alien structure. And for that reason, if something metastasizes, then you've got to knock it out in another way, usually through chemotherapy and radiation therapy. But if it metastasizes, it's a totally different ballgame. As long as you've got a tumor that is in one place and hasn't gone anywhere, then we can marshal your immune system to knock that sucker out. And we will. And they're doing more and more work with that. We used to not do a very good job with it, but now we're doing gene therapy, all kinds of interesting therapies. We're building up your immune system so you can knock it out. And that works as long as it hasn't metastasized. But it's human chorionic gonadotropin, of course, that allows the cancer cell to travel throughout your body. Human chorionic gonadotropin, along with clomiphene and tamoxifen, is taken by steroid users to restart their body's testosterone production. So they'll actually take HGH. If we have an athlete and we find HGH in their system, then we assume that they have been taking steroids and they're trying to mask it. So if we find HGH in their system, HCG in their system, we know that something's going on. This substance also blocks the increased effects of estrogen in the male body. A lot of times, Manny Ramirez, I don't know if you remember Manny Ramirez, number 99, he played for Boston and then he played for Los Angeles. Really good ball player, seemed to always get a hit when he needed to. They found HCG in his system. And because they found that, they banned him from baseball for like 80 games or something. And then he came back and by God, he had the same stuff in his system. So that means one of two things. It either means he's got cancer, or it means that he's trying to mask his steroids. In his case, he was trying to mask his steroids. The problem is, of course, that HCG can destroy your liver, and it can really screw up your reproductive system, especially if you're a male. You may be making yourself non-male for the rest of your life. So you have to be careful of what kind of drugs you're taking. Provigil acts as a stimulant and is used to treat narcolepsy. Athletes use the steroid THG. Will take this drug to mask that steroid. There are lots of things out there that we can use, that they can use to mask the steroid usage. Ornithine and arginine are amino acids taken to increase muscle mass because it is reputed that they cause an abnormal release of human growth hormone. Primagen is used in Europe to facilitate the release of steroids in the body. This is one of the reasons why Americans hate to go over to Europe and play against those guys. They're not using steroids, but they're still big as trucks. And one of the reasons is because they're masking it. They've been doing it a lot longer than we have. East Germans, of course, were really juicing themselves up. The communist bloc was really juicing themselves up. All that stuff came west as soon as the wall came down. So the French started using this crap, the West Germans started using it, the English started using it. So you never know who you're going to play against. We used to play, when I was stationed in Germany, we used to play against the Germans and just get our fannies handed to us because these guys were so big. But who knew what they were using? Let's pretend that they weren't better than we were. Vitamin B12 is used to ward off illnesses and provide extra energy. If you ever have a hangover, go to the doctor. If you've got a friend that's a doctor, he can give you a vitamin B12 shot and your hangover is cut in half. There you go, vitamin B12. We used to give these shots out every Monday morning. You know, somebody was still hungover from the weekend when I was working in Chandler, Oklahoma. Geez, we used to give just tons of these things. Vitamin B12. It's red. It's a red liquid. It's kind of fun. We used to give them vitamin B12 and vitamin B6 shots for their hangovers. Or you can drink a lot of orange juice. That works too. Not as well. As has been seen, athletes will do just about anything to take just about any, or take just about anything to improve their performance on the athletic field. Athletes will use stimulants to boost their performance, from innocuous caffeine and tobacco to more destructive amphetamines. And this is something that they will do. Athletes will use sedative hypnotics, especially Xanax, to unwind from stresses of competition. Sometimes these drugs are used to counteract the stimulants that they have used to perform. So they'll take anti-anxiety drugs. It's like taking amphetamines to wake up and barbiturates to put themselves back to sleep. The most widely used depressant by athletes is alcohol, of course. While in low doses, the substance does not hinder performance. In most cases, alcohol is used as a reward for performance, as a way to unwind, or as a consolation after a disappointment. They get drunk. Marijuana is contraindicated for performance, though when used in the right mood might actually improve performance. Marijuana doesn't help athletes because it lowers your blood pressure, causing fainting during competition. It inhibits sweating, which might lead to heat prostration during exercise. It decreases your tracking ability, and we talked about this when we were talking about marijuana, how it creates an after image. And for that reason, a lot of times athletes who have to react very quickly, they're actually not trying to catch the ball that's coming toward them, they're trying to catch the after image that is behind the ball, and that doesn't work at all. I used to play softball, and when I was in Montana, they would have these all-night co-ed things. It was really kind of goofy. The drunks were okay because they just laughed all the time. But the guys smoking marijuana, they couldn't play at all. I mean, it was dangerous for them to be out on the field. If you hit a line drive toward them, they probably didn't get their glove up in time to catch the ball, so they caught it right in the teeth. Really dangerous. I thought it was really stupid for them to smoke pot and try to play softball, because you can't. I mean, you can't track the ball. You're tracking the after image instead of the ball. It was really kind of dangerous. It hinders the ability to do complex tasks. It diminishes your eye-hand coordination. Decreases oxygen intake. It is banned by the NCAA, of course, and it's illegal in 40 out of 50 states. Because marijuana is fat soluble, it continues to impair your functioning for 1 to 2 days after you use it. So, and this is one of the problems we had with the Canadians. We'd get Canadian softball teams that would come down for our tournaments in Montana, and they'd bring whatever they brought. Usually it was Canadian club, But the first day they were kicking butt, and the second day they could barely function because they were all really messed up. And if they had been smoking pot, it was actually dangerous for them to be out on the field, especially if you were sober and they were stoned. Geez, it's like playing a game against a bunch of little bitty tiny people. It was crazy. And they would always drop out of the tournament the second day. First day they kicked butt, second day they had to go home. There are no limits to what people will do to get high. People have been known to smoke aspirin, to chew dandelion roots, to drink gasoline. They mix it with orange juice. Just think about this. You know how gasoline smells. Well, just put a little bit of orange juice in there, and they used to call it Montana gin. It tastes like crap. I mean, who's going to drink this stuff anyway? But if you need a high, there you go. Just mix it with orange juice, and you can call it Montana gin. They drink rubbing alcohol, which is poison. Idiots. They drink hydrogen peroxide, which isn't poison, but will make you vomit, which is always fun. They put Anbesol in their eyes. Anbesol is a topical anesthetic. It dilates your pupils, so I don't know. It makes you feel like something's going on. Or they'll smoke toad secretions. So they'll grab a toad and they'll squeeze it, and the stuff that comes out, they'll smoke it. As much fun as that. They also lick them, but we won't go in. Well, we are going to go into that in a minute. So for a good time, go lick a toad. Mortuaries have to watch their supplies of the fluid that they use to embalm bodies. This is formaldehyde, and I forgot my phone today, so I have no idea what time it is. 10? Okay, I got 20 minutes. I'm good. Okay, so they're smoking formaldehyde. This stuff's poison, okay? When it's inhaled, the substance acts as a depressant and a mild psychedelic. It can also be used to manufacture illicit drugs, the formaldehyde. When it's mixed with marijuana, the substance provides a PCP-like effect, and it's called clickins. Clickers, Fry, Wet, and Lily, as stupid as those names sound. So let's all put formaldehyde on our marijuana and have a good time. You can do lots of stuff with marijuana. You can spray Raid, you can put Lysol on it, you can spray hairspray on it. Sometimes they're used as for their alcoholic content, all of these three. Raid has been used to spray on marijuana to intensify the effects of the marijuana. And it's a concoction known as Can-Aid. Stupid as that sounds. Kava is a plant found in the South Pacific and South America. Individuals who've been stationed in South America or in the South Pacific, a lot of times they'll do all kinds of weird stuff. They'll drink this stuff. Now the reality is, in order to make it, you have to squeeze the roots, and you get this milky stuff out. I almost said shit, I didn't. Okay. You get this white milky stuff coming out, and it becomes alcoholic. But the only way to make it alcoholic is to spit in it, and then to let it sit and ferment. So what you're actually drinking is not only the kava root, but it's also somebody else's spit. But it's got alcohol in it. Don't worry, it's not like whatever diseases they have are going to affect you. It's alcohol, and the alcohol kills all the bacteria. So we're good to go. If you don't mind drinking somebody else's spit, as weird as that sounds. In some Arab countries, camels are force-fed marijuana. After going through the digestive process, the camel dung is smoked for its hashish content. It takes out all the plant structures, and it just leaves the resin, and that they smoke the camel dung, and they get hashish out of it. The Bufo genus of toads produces a psychedelic substance from its spores as a defense mechanism from attack. These toads are out here. They're out in the desert, in the Americas. So you can find them. They're out there. Just go lick one, see what happens. Just kidding. The toads are sometimes milked and the resulting substance is smeared on cigarettes and smoked for their psychedelic effects. But if you lick these things, it's on the surface of their skin, so you can lick them and get a psychedelic effect from it. As stupid as that sounds. All natural medications started out as herbal preparations concocted by shamans, medicine men, wizards, or physicians. Some of these herbs merely have a placebo effect, while others have been proven to contain chemical structures that have great benefits for mankind. Quinine, for example, that's what I had to take in Vietnam. It comes from the cinchona tree to fight malaria. It tastes like crap. You put it in your water, but it's better than having malaria. Some guys would put Kool-Aid packets in their water, and then they have to put this stuff in, of course. But it's the only way you can mask the horrible flavor. Yeah, okay. Well, anyway. I like cherry, Kool-Aid. No, okay. Don't ever use lemon. Lemon just makes it more intense, makes it taste more acidic. The search for fountain of youth are merely drugs that will help the individual recover from a hard night of drinking. I was recently come to the fore as smart drugs or drinks or nootropics. Smart drug drinks and nootropics are drugs, nutrients, vitamins, extracts, herbal potions such as ginseng, ginkgo biloba, and caffeine, and amino acids, of course. So the herbal potions that you take, and actually I took ginseng and ginkgo biloba this morning. So if I seem more functional today than I did yesterday, it's because I take it every day, it doesn't matter. There's a reason why I take it. Are you ready? You want me to tell you? There's both of them are supposed to increase the blood flow in your brain, allowing you to remember things better. Do they really work? Hell, I don't know. But I'm so old at this point, if I stop taking them, I'm afraid that can't remember anything. I still can't remember things. Anyway, that's why I take it. And it might work. My sister's starting to suffer from Alzheimer's because she's stupid. I've tried to learn things all my life. I've always wanted to learn things. My sister's the opposite. She's tried to not have to learn anything her whole life. So she has worked not to remember anything, and I've worked to learn everything. So we are the direct opposites. Well, unless you use your memory, unless you use this thing, unless you read and look at things and watch things and try to figure out what's going on, your memory goes away and your brain stops functioning. These all have to do with neural connections in your brain. The more you use it, the stronger it gets. It's just like a muscle. So if you use it, it gets stronger. My sister has tried not to use it. So she's gone backwards, and now she's starting to suffer from Alzheimer's disease, which is okay. I don't care. She can sit and not do anything for the rest of her life. She's primarily done that anyway. But so what she really needs to do, she asked me if I knew anything that she could take that would help her memory because she's starting to forget things. And I told her to take ginkgo biloba. Maybe that would help. I don't know. I haven't talked to her. She's an idiot. She doesn't. I want to talk about anything, but she doesn't want to talk about anything at all. She's kind of a goofball. Anyway, she's taking ginkgo now, and I hope it's helping her. I do love her. I don't want her to die, I guess. I don't want her to croak. She's kind of stupid. These drugs are reputed to boost your intelligence, to improve your memory, to sharpen attention, increase concentration, detoxify the body, energize the users, reverse the aging process. And of course, I've been trying to reverse my aging process since I turned 40. So I've been taking all of these things that theoretically make you younger. Melatonin is one of them that I don't use because it puts you to sleep. I mean, that seems kind of counterintuitive. But I do take ginseng, and I do take DHEA, and I do take ginkgo biloba. Is it working? Well, I'm not going to stop, because if I stop, you know, maybe all of a sudden, you just never know. Anyway, New Age smart drugs or nootropics include hydrogen, selegiline, vasopressin. Vasopressin is a memory enhancer. Vasopressin usually comes as a spray. You spray it up your nose. It's antidiuretic hormone. Vasopressin, it's supposed to help your memory. 5-HT has to do with serotonin. Modafinil, paracetam, oxyracetam, all of these are supposed to improve your memory, improve your learning, improve your memory consolidation, and improve memory retrieval. Sometimes I can't think of words. Maybe my ginkgo's not working that day, I don't know. Anyway, compulsive disorders or repetitive behaviors. So we're done talking about all the drugs that you can take. Do I suggest that you take ginkgo biloba? It's kind of expensive. I don't know. It's a tree from China. I know it was. It's an ancient tree. It's one of the genetically it's one of the oldest trees in the world. The reason that it survived is because they planted it in the Forbidden City. It's a tree that they found in the Forbidden City. It should have disappeared millions of years, thousands of years ago, millions of years ago. The Chinese recovered one, and for that reason, it's different from any tree that you've ever seen. And that's the ginkgo biloba tree. Does it really work? Hell, I don't know. I don't. I have no idea. It is kind of expensive. You can see them. This is the amazing thing about the ginkgo tree. It loses its leaves all at the same time. All of its leaves fall off at the same time. It's not like an oak tree where the wind blows and 15 leaves fall off. This thing drops all of its leaves at exactly the same moment. I know. It's weird. They had a really old one on the campus of Mississippi University for Women, and there was a story that if you were standing under the tree when all of its leaves fell off, then you would have a vision of the man you're supposed to marry. I know, it's so weird. It's just fun stuff, Okay. Mississippi University for Women. But it only works with that tree, so. Okay, so we're going to talk about compulsive behaviors. Compulsive disorders are repetitive behaviors that the individual appears not to have any control over. These are compulsive. I've been talking about compulsive behaviors lately. Marius is a little bit obsessive compulsive. Sarah's a little bit obsessive compulsive. There's probably something obsessive compulsive about me. I just don't recognize it or admit it. Okay, there you go. They come in two categories. There's a lot of, especially professors, there's a lot of borderline Asperger's syndrome in a lot of professors. There's a lot of obsessive compulsive behavior in a lot of individuals. And you can see it, sometimes it has to do with turning things in on time. Sometimes it has to do with, I don't know what it has to do. It has to do with a lot of different things. Poor Marius, he needs to clean his house before he can do any work. So he always cleans his house, which I'm thinking, yeah, I know.
I'm the same way.
Are you the same way?
Yes.
Well, I would like him to come over to my house and clean my damn house. I never get any work done, but maybe that's why, because I never clean my house. Anyway, he's such an interest. He's only here 2 days a week, and every time he arrives, he has to clean his house. Before he can leave, he has to go home and clean his house, which I just find strange, because I'm a slob and I do clean my house. Maybe I'll sweep my house on Saturday. It could happen. And then maybe not. I clean out my fire thing. Yeah, whatever that is. My wood stove, I clean it out every day. I cleaned it out every day.
Is
Yeah.
your dog stay inside with you?
I'm sorry?
Is your dog stay inside with you?
Yes. I'm white. White people they live with their pets. I moved into a house in Oklahoma one time and they had a pot-bellied pig and it had eaten through one of the bathroom doors, so the bottom of the bathroom doors. Because they put it in the bathroom when they went someplace. And the pig would try to get out. It's a pot-bellied pig. White people live with their pets. I know. Well, I leave the door open so we can go outside. Right, Francis? Mm-hmm. Okay. And they're pretty good dogs, aren't they? Yeah. Francis takes care of my dogs when I'm gone.
How many do you have?
I'm sorry?
How many do you have?
2, but I only have one right now. The other one's up in Montana, in Iowa. Yeah, I'm going to go home to Montana. Where's my house? As bad as my sister. Can't remember where I live. She's older than I am, so. So there's 2 different types of obsessive compulsive behaviors: impulse control disorders, compulsive gambling and hair pulling, compulsive disorders that have their own classifications: overeating, shopping, sexual behavior, internet use, watching television, pathological lying, shoplifting, and fire setting. With sexual behavior you can put in here, and with internet use you can put in there pornography. Because there are individuals that look at pornography for 8-10 hours a day, as strange as that may seem. You'd think it would get boring after, 5 hours it gets kind of boring. Impulse control disorders are actions that may be pleasurable in the beginning, but as the attempt to resist the impulse continues, becomes harmful to the individuals or others. This disorder also has accompanying tension or arousal before the act is committed. After culmination of the act, the individual often feels gratification. They feel pleasure, gratification, relief, and possibly remorse because they couldn't control their behavior. Maybe guilt, depending on what it is, if it's gambling or whatever. Or it's pornography, and they just spent all night looking at pornography, and they didn't get any sleep, and now they have to go do something else. They may feel guilt. Obsessive compulsive disorder is a repetitive activity where the goal is to reduce anxiety or distress caused by obsessive thoughts. The goal is rarely to provide pleasure or gratification and includes compulsive hand washing, compulsive checking, compulsive ordering. In other words, you put everything in the right order. Obsessive counting and obsessive praying, strangely enough. Of course, there are different religious groups that you're supposed to be praying all the time. I was watching Gettysburg the other day, and I guess Robert E. Lee was very religious, and he used to pray every morning, and he would pray before he gave orders to his men, and he would pray at night that they would all be safe. It was really kind of an interesting process, but he had to pray, and he had to pray continually, and he prayed for his men, because if he didn't, so he had obsessive praying. Was one of the things that Robert E. Lee did. Compulsive behaviors are engaged in for the same reason people compulsively use addictive drugs. At the Battle of Gettysburg, Lee ordered Pickett to charge the center of the Union line. He attacked 6,000 men with 13,000 men. And he thought he could break the Union line right there in the middle. And so he ordered the attack. He lost over half of his men. So he lost over 6,000 men. When they came back, they didn't break through the Union line. When they retreated, he apologized. He was apologizing to the men. And the reason he apologized wasn't because he ordered the attack, but he didn't pray hard enough for the attack to work. That was what he was doing. So he was a compulsive prayer. He thought that he and God could control the battlefield with his praying. And if he prayed hard enough, his men always won. And they did. up until 1863. And the battle of Gettysburg. So as they were coming back, he was apologizing for not praying hard enough. He apologized to his men. And of course, his men said, let us attack again. Of course, half of them were dead. They said, let us attack again. And of course, the Union line had just fortified itself, and they would have gotten themselves just annihilated. But they were willing to die just because he and God had tried to get them to win, and they'd lost. So they felt guilty about it, as stupid as that sounds, or as smart as that sounds. Right? It's military stuff. Compulsive behaviors are engaged in for the same reason people compulsively use addictive drugs. They get an instant rush from it. They forget their problems. They control their anxiety. They oblige their friends. They self-medicate. Usually it has to do with self-medication. These individuals are trying to alter their mood and change their state of consciousness. MRIs show that the same areas of the brain are activated when compulsive behavior is done as when drug use is anticipated or done. So those of you who do compulsive things, like clean your house before you can do anything else, it's activating that area of your brain that would be activated if you were taking drugs. So that this is a good thing, as long as it's a positive behavior, not compulsive pornographic viewing on the internet or whatever. There's no guilt involved, right? Well, we'll assume there's no guilt involved. So I'll see you guys next week. We'll talk more about